Kelsey, and welcome to the LPL Showdown. I'm here with DreXxiN and Razleplasm. Unfortunately, Froxgrin couldn't be here tonight, but a little bit about what we're going to do is we're first going to talk about the LPL structure and what makes it unique, and then we're going to talk about the matchups for tonight. First of all, when we talk about the LPL, some things that make it unique are the best of 2 point system. When teams face each other, they play twice, kind of like how OGN used to be. And if a team wins both games, they get 3 points. If they split even, so one team wins a game and another team wins another game, they get 1 point. This makes it so that teams can be really dominant and set their mark, but also teams lower in the standings can kind of make an upset by taking off 2 games. So in theory, you could have a worse record overall in terms of map wins, but still be rated higher than another team. Another thing that makes LPL a little bit unique is that they don't really restrict champions at all. So what happens is if a champion is released on the live patch, and it will also be on the tournament realm. So pretty much brand new Broken Lucian was free to play, or not brand new, but when his patch was tweaked. In addition to that, it's the largest league in terms of game volume. There's going to be 24 games each week. So we're going to try to release a little bit of extra videos as the Chinatown crew goes along, just to help you guys sort of follow what's happening and everything else. Anyway, let's get into the games. DreXxiN is a little bit of our LPL historian here, so I'm going to leave him to break down Lee versus IG a little bit.
Sure. So yeah, World Elite versus Invictus Gaming is actually a really cool starting point to start off a new season, just because these teams have a lot of history. I mean, even to this day, like there's some of the most recognizable brands like World Elite and Invictus Gaming. Like World Elite, since season 2 were the dominant team, leading up to IPL 5, where they showed their international dominance, and at the time IG was actually like their only fitting rival. So yeah, it's actually pretty cool that they're matching up against each other, but the thing is that it's actually only really brand legacy that kind of holds its own here, since both of the teams obviously have very different lineups. All the players have their own like history within the competitive scene. So it's not like brand new players. It's just players that have seen or had experience that are on the teams and representing those squads. Like for instance, World Elite's top laner is Aluka, and he was on the team with Name back when Positive Energy, was dominant in LPL. So the next would be Spirit, which is the jungler who's on was in Samsung Blue previously, and then Ninja, who replaced Sukim, which I'm still really on the fence about. But he replaced Sukim, who was the yeah. I always thought that Sukim was the better mid laner. Sukim was the guy that followed up Messiah's retirement, basically, and now he's replaced with Ninja, who's like pretty mediocre Korean, and it was like one of the first Koreans to enter the scene. STYZ, we know him from LGD. He was a very strong AD carry. Obviously not a Wei Zhao. I wouldn't put him to that tier, but he was very good, had a lot of promise, but got caught up in some drama, so got suspended for a while. And then we have Conan, who is he's Conan. He's not a very good laning support, but he had his little burst of fame when roaming was really, really popular, and he'd roam on champions like Leona. So that's his whole shtick. Now IG is a little more familiar. Because IG is still, if they're going off with the roster, I think they're going off of, they're still pretty much like led by Zatai. So Zatai and Kid are the remaining players on that team that are still existent on the squad back from the legacy era, essentially. Zatai, really young guy. He's been playing since he's been really young, but he's been known to plateau once meta champions become really popular, but is also the first to dominate on those champions. He's really, really good at those champions, like when they first come out and stuff. So a fresh season for him and being the opening game should give him an actually pretty inherent advantage, and I'd say that the matchup favors him to Ninja quite a bit. Top lane is Save, kind of fills those shoes of PDD in a bit if you think about it, so that's kind of cool. Yeah, he's gonna probably style all over Luca. I don't see that match really going not in Save's favor, and if not, there's something horribly wrong, and the whole retirement home curse has hit them.
Yeah, that's a pretty safe bet unless we see some jungle action up there.
Yeah, but and obviously it's going to be IG's bottom lane is going to be Kid and Kitties. So we already talked a little bit about them. I think Kid has gotten just better and better. He's really good. Kitties is obviously very good, replacing Zhao Zhao from the roster people are probably familiar with in their heyday. Now, but the most interesting matchup, which is what I've saved for last, is probably going to be Kakao versus Spirit. So Kakao is IG's jungler now, replacing Illusion, who is now on their B squad over on Young Glory. So yeah, that's gonna be a very Korean face-off. It's gonna be it's gonna be KT versus Samsung, but obviously in China. So Spirit is obviously very good, and Kakao is probably people would rate him a top 3 jungler in the world of all time. So that's probably gonna be our most interesting matchup there.
I like how the junglers kind of fit their team styles. Like Ninja needs a babysitter, and I think of Spirit as kind of a babysitter jungler. And obviously IG is like so ham and so in your face and so random that I think Kakao kind of really fits there too. So I think if they can get around the language barriers, they can really make it work, and we can see something exciting out of both of them.
Yep, pretty much.
Mhm.
The next matchup after World Elite and Invictus Gaming opens is going to be Snake versus Ganty. Raz has followed Snake quite a bit, so I'm going to go ahead and let him sort of break this down.
Yeah, Snake throughout the LPL has generally made a name for themselves for a kind of an like, oddball, kind of snowballish compositions that are generally centered around Flandre, their top laner. An example you would kind of shoot would be his Yasuo, Fizz, and funny enough, his Trinity Force Static Shiv LeBlanc. Um, yeah, Snake. It feels like as the split went on, the LSPL split, they tried to kind of they've realized that they needed to kind of dial it back and play a more structured role, but they kind of tend to come back to it and use it as a crutch. But yeah, one major issue with their compositions is that team will of course tend to 2v1 whatever goal reliant top laner Flounder runs, but it seems like Snake has a very strong real like understanding of the 2v1 play, or at least much higher than the LSPL teams. So when of course they do face up to the LPL squads, it's not. God damn it! Okay. Um, it's but yeah, when they do face upper echelon teams, they do falter quite convincingly. They don't play up to that quality. Um,
Would you say that they kind of have this very set strategy, and it's a lot easier for top LPL teams to figure them out?
yeah, 100%. Yeah,
I feel like they're
and
kind of similar to World Elite Academy in that regard, where like they were convincing enough in LSPL to run this like same strategy over and over that worked really well in one league, but was capitalized on by other teams. So I think Snake's kind of in the same boat there, where they're in this like awkward position of dominating the secondary league, but they're going to have a lot of trouble being anything but the bottom of the barrel for LPL. But correct me if I'm wrong.
but in this current matchup, I think they will do perfectly fine. I think even in the early stages of the LPL, they'll do all right. Just because, of course, teams will LPL teams. I mean, they have faced third-party teams pretty consistently in third-party tournaments and failed. But I do believe that this can catch people off guard because just based on their like, I feel like that surprise factor can really take teams on. I don't know. It's
How do you think their new Koreans fit in? So we talked a little bit about the Korean additions in World Elite and Invictus Gaming. How do we feel about Ella and Beast joining Snake instead of Reborn and Colin?
Colin really did structure whatever team comps they would really, because of course he would play a very disengage heavy champion. Like he had like his Nami, his Braum. It would really set the tone and for whatever squishy high damage comp that they had. And of course, how way he played it was to the point in which I would say fan to fans weaknesses in lanes weren't really shown as much. I think he he definitely carried that lane. I'm not so sure how um, Aya is going to be performing. He back in Korea. He's kind of like a low challenger, master tier player. He did play on Avalanche, which is a pretty successful team in the Korean challenger scene, but it's not like there's not a lot of expectations going for him. Reborn really did. He played a very efficient jungle because that was the role that he had to play. With how many kind of gold reliant, split pushing, just heavy farm champions that tended to be in his, of course, in the game. So you could make criticisms of his play, but I felt like he definitely played as well as he could have. But then of course I think Beast and Aya could provide a lot more in terms of um, decision making, map control, that kind of Korean discipline that maybe that team needs. And if it works out for them, then that works out. Then I can understand it. But I think this is like it's a setback because of course these are B tier Korean talent, and we've seen how that worked on World Elite initially.
Right. And just for people wondering, Fan it says Baka on the screen, and I think he'll be going by Crystal.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
And Baka is Copy, which we didn't really talk about Copy. He's kind of a little bit of a glue. He shows up when they need someone, but the team is very reliant on Flandre.
Yeah, he also he's generally going to be like, I guess depending on if they go back to that play style in which of course Flounder will be split pushing, or Fan, or at least now known as Crystal, will be kind of like playing that scaling AD carry. He's going to be playing that mage wave clear role. He hasn't really played assassins that heavily. He's not known for it. And so, of course, when the Yasuo pick comes up, then people will generally know that it's not going to be his picks. He doesn't play LeBlanc, but he doesn't exactly need to. He just plays the wave clear champions, and he plays it to a T, I'd say. He plays it pretty well. In just being able to stall for whatever, well, just kind of stall when they need him, but also just play perfectly, I would say. He'd always be consistent, I guess I can say about him. Mm.
And in terms of how they match up against Gamtee, you think they're gonna do pretty well? I think that Gamtee kind of has this matchup.
Hmm.
In many regards, I think that Let Me can stand up to Flandre. I think Flandre will be a little bit stronger in the 1v1, especially with the resources that his team gives him. But I think Let Me has a very different style. He's going to focus a lot more on using the teleports, getting the dragon fights with Gamtee. Gamtee likes to play like a slower laning phase until they get that level 6 power spike and then challenge for the dragon. So they don't really like jungle pressure. The enemy of Gamtee is kind of jungle pressure generally. Of course, that can be said of a lot of teams, but they really don't deal with it as well. In WGT, we saw this lineup of Gamtee. They did really well. They actually upset King, who we'll talk about a little bit later, but by playing this Soraka Ezreal lane where they just kind of passively waited until the level 6 power fight and the spike, and then they all roamed mid and they got a dragon off that. And so that, I think, really surprised King. We might see some more surprises come out of Gamtee. I think the thing about them is that unlike Snake, where you can kind of look at their roster and say, well, this is this weakness that they have to compensate for here, I think Gamtee has a lot of really talented players. So we'll see how well that goes. I think that with the right resources, all of Snake's lanes might pull some upsets, though, so it's closer skill-wise than you might think. I just think it's favored by Gamtee just in terms of the creativity that they can bring to the table, and also just a little bit across the board in terms of skill.
That's a fair assessment, I'd say. I kind of do like it feels like a very interesting clash like a stylistic clash, just because I guess Snake would definitely favor a more split pushing style, I would say, unless of course if somehow in some way Flandre does get his Gnar, then you'll see a lot more focus on team fighting. But Snake has been the team that's generally, they will team fight and scrap if they can, but generally they'll favor that split pushing method. So it'll be interesting to see how that works in terms of like of both teams, but I personally favor Snake.
In general, they're both very fresh, kind of green teams, so I think they're going to be exciting to watch and maybe a little bit rough around the edges, so that'll be an interesting match.
I feel like that's what I need.
Yep.
I actually personally really like Energy Pacemaker versus LGD Gaming, which is the third best of 2 of tonight for the history, because on paper in the spring, the last time Energy Pacemaker was in LPL, LGD always looked like the much better team, but the record in spring was 3-1 in favor of Energy Pacemaker, and in the first week they had a matchup, and Energy Pacemaker just came out and blew them out of the water a little bit, and people thought, oh wow, is Energy Pacemaker actually going to be good? Like, is this going to be a good team after their time in LPL, which didn't go so well the split before, but then LGD had a much better run. Energy Pacemaker ended up getting relegated, so I think again on paper LGD should have no trouble in this matchup, but you never know, we might see the return of the curse.
Yeah. I mean, because, LGD, I mean, it might not seem like, if you put lane to lane, obviously LGD has an even larger disparity than Energy Pacemaker than before. But the thing is, like, yeah, I mean, they defied logic before, too. Now, the bottom lane of Energy Pacemaker is actually the strong suit, I'd say. Like, not in the sense that they're, like, leaps and bounds ahead of any of their competition, but, like, relative to their competition that they did have, they went head-to-head a lot better than their other lanes. And now, Kane, their AD carry, actually has some would argue, better support than Domho, which is Zhu. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but I think that's how it's pronounced. Zhu. Yeah, Zhu, sorry. So, yeah, that should be pretty interesting. But the thing is they're also going against a arguably better bottom lane, because instead of fielding STYZ with PYL, it's going to be Imp. So I don't think Kane will hold up well to Imp, unless, again, we go back to the whole discussion on the whole Chinese retirement home thing. So it depends if they've been trying or not. Now, the top laner has been a thing of controversy, and obviously shout outs to Soldier, because this is like his favorite guy to talk about, but Amazing J is someone who, in the context of his former competition, he was actually quite strong. Like, he held his own, but obviously now that there's a huge influx of Korean talent and also domestically improved top laners, I don't think we can see Amazing J doing very well, especially assuming that LGD starts Acorn. Acorn or Flame, either one will probably tear him apart. So that's kind of like now. The other thing is Energy Pacemaker also has a new mid laner that originated from KX Happy named Luo, and he's being used in place of Super Cat. But either way, I think this is an improvement, but I don't think it'll be enough to match up to Wayless, because Wayless is like probably the superstar of his team in terms of like, superstar in the sense that he shines that light on him, not that he's like necessarily the best player or the strongest asset to the team, but he kind of goes ham. He highlights himself a lot in his play, but in general he's just a solid but sometimes inconsistent just because of how ham he goes mid laner. And then the jungle matchup is kind of up in the air, because it's Captain 57 versus Chuen, who will either show that he's improved or show just how much worse he's been plateauing, essentially.
Yeah.
Captain 57 is going to be stronger jungler than Chuen, but if you don't have the lanes to kind of back you up as a jungler, it's really difficult. Yeah, and in terms of Wayless, to build on your point, he's Lucifer on your screen. He'll probably go by Lucifer tonight. Chuen, TBQ. But in terms of Lucifer or Wayless, he's the playmaker. He's the guy, when we talk about the guy who wants to make plays, the guy who goes too hero. They actually think, even in China, that Wayless is too hero, meaning that he goes a little bit too ham. So I really favor Wayless a lot. He's kind of, I think this is almost his year to do well in mid lane and surprise people. So he's definitely someone I'd highlight in this match. I think Lua plays a much more, a kind of a more conservative style, for sure. A little bit more mages, but he will go all in and play those assassins. So.
Yeah, I do feel like the matchup of the night, just between those two teams, would be TBQ and Captain 57. And generally, if Lee Sin doesn't get banned out, then of course both teams, or at least both players specifically, would love to have that and try to carry either any lanes with that pick. So it'll be interesting to see. It really will start off. The game will definitely start off for me in picks and bans and how that really portrays.
Yeah, and for me, I'm actually really interested to see how Wayless plays because now that he has these other laners, like you kind of feel like the standard is raised for LGD, so it makes you wonder if he's going to kind of have that leash effect and calm down and be a little bit more reasonable with his play. So yeah, if we see a more controlled and precise Wayless, that's definitely something to look out for to see if he wants to, because he has a lot of players to play up to with all the superstars on the team now. But yeah, so that should be an interesting match. But yeah, the final one, or not the final one, sorry. The match following that one, I believe, is EDG versus King. So this is a pretty special rivalry, just because the teams were pretty much segregated by league, so they didn't really play each other outside of practice in terms of LPL and LSPL. King has been a top LSPL team, EDG obviously a top LPL team. So despite these, being the quote-unquote amateur and professional league, which isn't exactly how it works, but that's besides the point. These two have actually had pretty close series. Like they've met in 3 different finals in the off season, I believe. So
King has been in like every final except for I think one where a couple where they got 3rd place, and then there was one where they faced Edward Gaming in round of 16 in Demacia Cup. But otherwise, like almost every final in the off season tournaments has been like Edward Gaming versus King.
Yep, and King actually even took one of those sets, but most recently, EDG actually took a 3-0 in G League. So despite what the score would suggest, it was actually not as convincing as you would think. Like, King actually played good games against them. So it's actually really interesting because you haven't really had, since, like, I mean, the most relatable thing to a North American audience would be how Cloud9 came in, I guess, because we haven't really had something like that in other regions very frequently. And this is actually a chance for King to kind of pull off that same pedigree and, like, go toe-to-toe with these top teams and even like defeat them once in a while. But yeah, what's actually the most interesting matchup for me is actually the top lane matchup. It's going to be Sky versus Koro. Koro, probably the most improved player in all of China, simply because he's gone from kind of like the safe role to like a solid player to like almost a carry role, but still not the kind of like flame type player, but the one that's like really good individually and can do a lot for his team in team fights. He's gotten so good, and Sky is a domestic Chinese top laner who's for a while, I'd say, been a lot stronger than what LPL had to offer, and is finally being able to step his foot into there and go against other domestic Chinese competition. And this guy is pretty much a carry top laner, and he has like a lot to prove. So it'll be interesting to see those two match up.
I expect Aurelia bans because both of these players have really had crazy Aurelia games. So
yeah, the proficiency on both players when it comes to Aurelia, this is 100%. Like I would say, this is my matchup for the night because of course, like EDG versus King, that's
really exciting.
Yeah. So yeah, it'll be really nice to see which team comes out on top this time. Of course, with how close these teams have generally gotten. So,
I feel like we start the night with a classic Chinese rivalry, and we end the night with like the new kind of hotness. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, but of course we don't know how all the teams with the Koreans and stuff will stack up. But for the off season, Edward Gaming and King definitely built up kind of a rivalry, being in so many finals together. So it's been pretty cool to see. I think that a lot of people compare King overall kind of like to an old style ONG in terms of doing the freight train, the really early wording and grouping, everyone always in one lane, kind of surprising a lot of people.
Yeah.
Lei, I think, is a really strong playmaking support. Wuxin is definitely a rising AD carry talent. If we eliminate, the de facto top 4 AD carries, the UZI, Name, Deft, who is on Edward Gaming, and Imp, you end up with Wuxin as your top kind of Chinese lady carry here. Assassin has had like his off and ons, but he's pretty reliable as kind of a backup when Sky or Wuxin don't really have the best games. So,
Yeah.
Isn't Assassin also, he used to have to play a supportive role, and now he's kind of being able to play as Assassins, as his name would suggest? Like, because I think he was held in the same kind of champion prison that you was for EDG, or am I wrong?
It's correct to it's really weird, mostly because of like what King really defines himself as a team, because it feels like they're always based on what's strong in the meta. So of course, whatever stylist, like whatever style that player brings into the team, I feel like it's maybe not as valued or forgotten, because he did play a very supportive kind of role on the team during the summer LSPL. But I think it was mainly just based on the 4 point, I think it was a 4.1 patch in which the AD carries got buffed exponentially. So of course he was playing that supportive role. Wuxian was the kind of the main carry, and of course he had Sky in the top lane, picking his general like meta champions with Irelia and Gragas at the time. Yeah, I do believe so. And the things never did change for Sky because he was always that secondary threat, but for Assassin, he definitely had a change in style. I'd say maybe I would say now to his more comfortable one.
my favorite, I think, King games that I've seen, I want to say it was NEST, where they faced OMG's Worlds lineup, and all of them just played Assassins. You had the Kazakhs and Akali, and Tristana was kind of, who has like that reset mechanism.
That's not exactly
I
the
think
truck.
Assassin played Zed. It was pretty hilarious to watch them just kind of wreck OMG with that. But yeah, so King is definitely a team to watch out for. I'm not sure how they're gonna stack up in LPL proper and against some of these question mark teams with big name Koreans, but I currently rate them very highly. Edward Gaming, I think, has shown in the series that they played with this roster, has shown some surprising similarity to how they used to be. I think their team fighting is a little bit weaker because of the communication issues, but I think they've transitioned a little bit more to like this solo lane dominant kind of early game that allows them to bridge into the late game where Clear Love and Deft are going to come out and team fight really well. So that will be... It's also stylistically very different because EDG likes to play a better late game and King has kind of almost a cheesy early game approach.
The good old LSPL signature. But yeah, that'll probably be the highlight match of the, like, realistically in terms of quality of play. That'll probably be the one to watch out for. With storyline as well. Like they've had a pretty good storyline in the off season, at least in terms of recent things. But the final match is actually going to be Starhorn versus Master 3.
Tomorrow.
Or is that tomorrow?
Yes.
Wait. Okay, so this is the final match, or am I wrong?
Yeah.
There are
Okay.
4 best of 4.
Sorry, guys.
But yeah, Starhorn versus...
That's gonna be cool too.
And
But yeah.
It will be really cool tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. Probably the thing I'm looking forward to most all week. I know it's weird. I get OMG versus VG is happening, and I'm looking forward to Starhorn versus M3. But we will hopefully release some wrap-up videos, maybe on Saturday or something, right before China Talk again on Sunday. I hope you guys enjoyed this LPL rundown preview. I hope it helps you kind of focus and look forward to the matches tonight. So enjoy LPL. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry for the derp, guys, but I hope you do enjoy. It should be a treat. It'll be nice to see things finally kick off again and finally start an LCS split without these like mystery B Koreans and actually have top tier talent like everywhere. So this is like I've said on China Talk, this is probably going to be the most interesting league to watch in spring out of like everything available. Truth be told, so
100%.
should be fun.
Yeah, I'll be looking out for it. This is gonna be fun. See you guys.